I don't tack on to directors' names until they start to make an impression on me. Well, now this guy's made an impression on me. This is a pretty well-written ghost mystery. Okay, so that was like a tagline that just came to me as a good way to describe this movie, Last Night in Soho, which I went to see tonight. It was, oops, sorry. Hold on a second, my dog wants to get down. Okay, I'm back. He had to get up here and then he just wanted to get down. So whatever, had to rearrange everything, push the desk out, pull it back in. Okay, so back to the movie. Tonight I went to see the Last Night in Soho. I couldn't go see it the night before. I would have preferred to go see it the night before, but I had an advanced screening going on here at the house. It was one I was getting paid for, so I wasn't going to turn down that opportunity. So that's where I was last night, watching something here at home. Anyway, Last Night in Soho, it stars, I did write down the names of everybody because I want to try to get better at that, but I'm a work in progress. This movie was directed by Edgar Wright. I did not find out until I watched a fellow YouTuber in his video, his review of this movie, mention, and this is D Movie Man, he's been on some streams with me before. He was mentioning, or he showed pictures, I think, of some of the movies that Edgar Wright had directed, and I don't tack on to directors' names until they start to make an impression on me. Well, now this guy's made an impression on me. The films that he has directed previously, these are just a few. Baby Driver, which that was a good movie. Shaun of the Dead, which was great. I love that movie. Hot Fuzz and The World's End. I have not seen Hot Fuzz yet, but I've heard it's really good. Anyway, so I feel like he did a really good job with this movie. He wrote it, he directed it. It stars Thomasin McKenzie, who is that girl right there. She played, the very first time I saw her was in Jojo Rabbit, and just feels like she's grown up so much since then. And also she played in Old. And it also stars Anya Taylor-Joy, who's that girl right there, and Matt Smith, who is the guy you often see with Anya Taylor-Joy. Terrence Stamp, who for whatever reason, I thought he had passed away already. So when I was seeing him show up in the trailers, he's the older guy that you see. She's interacting with him and she's accusing him of doing this bad thing. And he says, I've done a lot of things, love. You're going to have to remind me what it is, or something like that. I didn't realize he was still alive. Glad to know it. But anyway, he's in here. I thought he did really good too. And Diana Rigg. She has a smallish part, but I found out that this was her last starring role. She died, oh geez, when was it? Was it last year? It was sometime after Game of Thrones had ended. Within a year, I think, after Game of Thrones had ended. And I remember she was in that for a little bit. Anyway, so this movie. There were really only two things that kind of just like, meh. But it was so minor. It really, to me, wasn't enough to ruin the entire experience for me. And maybe I'll touch on those later if I remember. Watch me forget. But so the premise of this story is the character of Thomasin, her name is Eloise. She is an aspiring fashion designer. And she lives in this little, like, far away little sort of countryside area, I guess, far removed from London. She is approved to go, or she's accepted to go to this school of, like, the arts or some sort of fashion design school, someplace in London. She's accepted there. She goes there. She's very naive. She's got these stars in her eyes about London and what she wants to do in the fashion industry. And she's the type of person that sort of, I guess, feels like she lives in the wrong era. Many years ago, I kind of felt the same way. I felt like I was living in the wrong era, like I would have felt much more at home, or I feel like I would have been more comfortable in like the 50s and 60s or something, because of the music that I liked and the movies that I liked and stuff like that. And so she reminded me somewhat of myself, that aspect of her. And you can tell right off the bat, very early on, it establishes that she has the gift to see ghosts, or at least her mother's ghost in the very beginning. That is shown like right away. And so you can tell she's had some issues with that because her grandmother is worried when she's going to go off to London. She's worried it's just going to be so overwhelming for her, and she's going to have like a mental breakdown because apparently something bad had happened before with her because of this sort of stuff. And her mother had committed suicide. And so mental issues run in the family. I can't remember why they said the mother committed suicide, if it was because she could see ghosts too, and maybe it just drove her over the edge. I don't remember, or maybe she just had issues and it was just that. Anyway, so she goes to London, stars in her eyes. She goes to the dormitory where she's going to be staying, and she's not really accepted very well. Her fellow classmates, her fashion designer classmates and her dorm mate are just kind of, they're not very accepting of her, and she feels like she doesn't fit in, especially in the crowd, because she's been so sheltered and the people are drinking and acting crazy, and she's in her room trying to sleep, and her roommate comes in with a guy, and they're getting ready to go hot and heavy right there in front of her, so that's the roommate right there. She's like a mean girl, and so she just feels very out of place. You feel really sorry for her throughout much of the movie, actually, because of what she's going through it. But I felt bad for her in the beginning, especially because of the way she was treated by the people that she was mingling with, for her schooling. And I understood very much how she just felt like she didn't belong or she didn't fit in. Like a lot of times, I feel very similarly, like in a really huge, large group or crowd of people. That's not something I feel comfortable. Like I feel comfortable in just a more smaller, intimate group of people, friends, whatever. So I could identify, in a lot of ways with how she was. And so she ends up going to another place to stay. And that's when things start to happen, because the place that she stays has a history. Some bad stuff went down in there, especially in the room where she spends her time. And it starts happening in dreams. And she goes back into the 60s, and she's seeing things through the lens or through the eyes of this girl who wanted to be a singer, Anya Taylor-Joy's character. What was her name? Sandy. And she becomes kind of infatuated with her because she's so glamorous and she's so talented and she can sing so lovely and all of this. So she's infatuated with her. And so she starts to do things like she bleaches her hair, and she's always kind of dressed like someone from the 60s anyway. And she got a coat that was very similar to the white coat that Sandy wore and stuff like that. So then she starts to detect some trouble in Sandy's past. And there's this murder that she sees, and she's haunted by that. She doesn't want to go to sleep after a while because of how upsetting it is to her to see the stuff that she's seeing. I'm not going to get into detail about what's going on because I want you to kind of experience it for, as you kind of like how she did. You start off, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. What a cool story. And then, oh, there's some big problems going on here. And it's kind of like a rude awakening to her. She has stars in her eyes, like I said, about the 60s in London. And then she starts to see there's this very nasty, ugly underbelly of the city, of this time period that she thought was so magnificent and gorgeous and wonderful and just innocent and sweet. And, a lot of times we do, I think, when we look in the past or, previous decades, and in a lot of ways, it does feel like things are worse now. I think mostly that is because of inventions like social media, which feels like it's just tearing people apart so much. But we have to remember that no matter what time period you look back to, it's filled with humans, and humans can do some really awful things. And so it shouldn't be too shocking to find out that time periods that you thought were wonderful, really in a lot of ways they weren't, especially if you dug deep below, listen to me. It is tomorrow, you guys. If you dug deep below the surface, it was like maybe it was hidden a little better, or people were maybe more ashamed of certain behaviors, so they didn't necessarily broadcast it. So a lot of people really weren't aware of stuff like that. And so, it's just a rose-colored sort of glasses type of view that a lot of people have about certain time frames. And this main character, Eloise, that was certainly the way she was. So eventually, the ghosts of the past start to sort of integrate themselves into her world when she's conscious, not even when she's asleep. And it starts to she starts to go a little cray-cray. Well, she's not really, but people around her think that she is. And so she's trying to figure out what's going on, and she's convinced that she of something that has happened, and you're watching it's like, wow, this, what's going to happen? Like, how is this going to be able to be resolved? Can it even be resolved? What's going to happen with her? And there's one fella that's a fellow classmate of hers, and you can tell he's taken an interest in her. And that actor's name is Michael Ajayo. Oh gosh, I know. I actually watched a video with him in it so I could remember how to pronounce his name, and I don't remember how to correctly pronounce his name. Anyway, he was in here. He was like her love interest friend type of guy, and his character was so sweet. I mean, and just the kindest guy. And he wanted to help, he could tell she was troubled and he was trying to help. And so he gets involved in a little bit, with what's going on. And there's a scene that happens with him when he's with her, and then certain things start to happen, like the ghost stuff starts to happen, and all this crap goes down, and the situation is really like, oh my gosh, it's just so terrible, because I'm not going to say too much to specifically say what it is, but the situation is such that it's going to look bad. I don't want to say it, guys. I don't want to give it away, but it was just like very uncomfortable, because you're like, oh my gosh, and you knew what was going on, but her friend had no clue what the heck was going on, and he was frightened, and yet it was just a very perilous situation. Let's just say that much. Anyway, so you get further into the story, and okay, so for myself, I started to think or wonder if we were being misled about something, just because there were little clues dropped here and there. And it ended up that we were. And then I sort of started to think, well, I wonder if this is the situation. And that was the case. But then something else was revealed to us that I did not see coming. I completely didn't, because you were intentionally led in a direction to make you think something else. And I'm trying to be super vague, but let's just say it's written in such a way that you are expected to go along with this certain type of thinking, and it's completely understandable that you are. And then other things come into play, and then you realize there was a whole other thing, there's a whole other situation going on, or that had gone on, that you weren't aware of at the time. It's like, like little onion layers being peeled back. I just thought it was really cool how these things were revealed, and eventually you started to figure out what was going on. So there was only that one reveal that was a complete shocker to me. The other stuff that was revealed at the end, I wasn't super surprised about, because I had started to sort of kind of piece certain things together, and maybe you will too anyway. Maybe people just watching it will start to sort of notice. But I felt like it was really well done. I felt like the pacing was very good. It didn't feel super rushed or anything, and it didn't feel too long. And you really got a good sense for the characters in here, and I thought that the acting was extremely well done, and well, pretty much everyone. And the suspense was really good, and you could just, I don't know, I just felt very immersed in the story and very mesmerized by what was happening. I didn't feel bored one moment at all, and never felt like there was a part where things dragged. And I really appreciated the heck out of this movie. I thought it was very, very good. There's only, like I said, the two things that happened, there's just like, what? And one of them was so minor. It was so, okay, I guess this may be just, I don't have a great appreciation for things like fashion shows, you guys. So there was a scene like, and I know this is something that happens. I've seen it, but it just kind of like took me out of the moment, because I wasn't expecting this thing to happen. Like, there's a fashion show, very nice feminine dresses, and there's these guys modeling them. And I was just like, what? And I know it's a thing. I know it goes on. I've seen it with even worse outfits than what these guys were modeling, which was perfectly fine, like 60s style dresses and everything. But it was just like, what? I wasn't expecting that. That was so, all right. So that was like a really minor thing. But the other thing that happened that kind of, it didn't sit very well with me, and I'm going to try to be super vague, because I don't want to say, I don't want to get too specific, because I don't want, like I've said, spoilers. But there was a comment made by one of the characters about people that deserved to die because of certain things. And then another character was in agreement with that. Now, part of me, looking back on this movie and seeing the things that were going on, well, to me, there was, if I had to get down to it, I guess I would say there's really fundamentally, in my opinion, only one person that truly deserved what went down. The other people, I can't agree with that. And it didn't sit well with me, because I felt like it was trying to manipulate my feelings about things that a person had done, trying to make you feel sorry for this person because of extenuating circumstances in their life. It's kind of like, see, I'm trying to be so vague, you guys, but basically I didn't appreciate that type of manipulation that went on, because I can't agree with that particular mindset. I understand why the person felt compelled to do the things that they did, but I don't agree that it was something that the victims deserved. And it also didn't sit well with me that the other person was in agreement with that. When you see this movie, you'll know what the heck I'm talking about. But that was probably the main thing that was just like, really wish you hadn't put that line in there, because then that makes me think a bit differently about these characters. And I didn't want to think that way about them. So, yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that, just to continue with the vagueness. But okay, I knew there was something that I was probably going to forget, and this is it. It's really minor, and it's not even really a complaint about the film per se. It's something that I thought would bother me going into the film, and it really didn't, to the extent that I figured it might. And that was, so in the trailer, the main girl's voice, the character of Eloise, the way she talks, I don't remember that actress sounding like that in the other movies that I'd seen her in. So obviously it was something that it was an affectation that she was making. It was like the way she was making her character sound for the movie, like this pitch and tone that she had to her voice in the trailers. It really kind of like I work in audio. I like what I do revolves around how people sound, and it wasn't that the acting in her line delivery was bad. It was the tone of voice she chose to use for this character, or maybe that was how the director told her to do it. But when I watched one of the trailers for the movie, her voice, it just like it kind of grated on me. I did not like the way it sounded, and I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to dislike her character because her voice is getting on my nerves? And I went into the movie, and it really ended up not being to that extent at all. There were a few times, obviously some of the lines from the trailer when she's speaking in the movie, and then maybe a time or two beyond that where she has that affectation to her voice, or the way she does her voice. It was like, it's like maybe she's trying too hard to sound like this character, and I kind of noticed it when it happened. Sometimes also it had to do with the scene that was going on at the time, and so you can understand maybe her tone would take this different pitch to it that it did. But yeah, and like I said, that's not really even a complaint about the film. It's something that I thought would be a complaint, but it ended up not really even being much of an issue at all. So yeah, that was just another thing I wanted to mention. Okay, back to the review. I have to say, I do not feel like this movie was a waste of my time at all, and I'm very glad I was able to see it. I hope it does well. The theater was fairly well, filled tonight. I went to like the 7:10 showing or something. I hope word of mouth is good. It's got decent reviews with the critics, the official critics, and it's got very good reviews with the audience. And I don't think I would rate it as high up there as currently the audience is rating it on Rotten Tomatoes. It's like at 92%. I don't think it's going to stay there. I think it's going to probably come down into the 80s or maybe the very high 70s. That's kind of where I would fall on that sort of, spectrum of numbers if I had to pick anything. But yeah, if you like ghost stories, if you like mysteries, if you like period pieces, because this is kind of a period piece. A lot of the movie takes place in the 60s in London. And I don't know, I really enjoyed this movie, and I would recommend it if you like this kind of thing. Now, some people may hate it, but it's so well written, and it's so well acted, and the pacing is good, cinematography is good, that I feel like most people who watch it will probably appreciate it. And I feel like that's deserved. This director has a really good track record, in my opinion, with this. I mean, I just was looking at, the stuff that he's done, and I don't know all the other movies he's done, but he's got it. I mean, he knows what he's doing. He's very good. And I'm going to try to make an effort now for sure to see Hot Fuzz. I loved Shaun of the Dead. I did enjoy World's End. I think I like Shaun of the Dead more than World's End. Baby Driver was a lot of fun. Very, very well done film. So yeah, I like this guy's work, and I recommend this film, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Anyway, let me know what you think if you ever get around to seeing it. I guess that's it. Can't think of anything else, so I'm going to wrap this up, try to get it edited so we can go up later today, since it is now Saturday. Yeah, have it up for the weekend. So, all right, you guys, adios.